This is going to be one of my favorite text effects using layer styles. Layer styles I used to teach as FX for effects. Before we begin, I have this shot of biscuits, which I just want to eat up right now. And what I'm going to do is choose Edit, Define Pattern. It's very important that you make a pattern before you add your type. The effect we're going to create is type rising up through the biscuit. So when I choose Edit Define Pattern, I rarely change the name if the file name is something useful like biscuits. And I'll click OK. I'll click my Type tool once, and click once on the document and type biscuits, which is the nickname of my dog, by the way. Now I'll do a Select All, Control-A or Command-A. And for years, Photoshop has had what's called scrubby sliders. Scrubby sliders allow me to get over these two T's where the type size is and click and drag up and to the right diagonally to make this visually bigger. Even though it looks like I'm going straight right and left, you really want to be dragging at a 45-degree angle. Just imagine a diagonal line, not straight up and down, not straight left and right, but diagonally so it proportionally scales up. In fact, not a lot of people know that you don't need to change to the Move tool to actually move the word biscuits. All I need to do is be above or below or anywhere outside the highlighted area, and I can move the text. And here is my absolute favorite tip for choosing a font. If you click directly on the font name, not the arrow to the right of the font name, but right in the word Myriad. Myriad Pro is the default or out-of-the-box or factory font. But click right in the name and hit your up and down arrow keys on your keyboard, and it will go alphabetically through every font on your system. Now, every system is different, so you will have different font selections than I do. There's a core group of fonts that ships with the Creative Suite and specifically with Photoshop, and you can Google that to find out exactly what they are. So I'm just going to surf through until I find something that makes me think of food. I tend to like for food a more casual font because I want to relax while I eat, but you can land on anything you'd like. Just my up arrows going up alphabetically. If I want to see the type in its own face, there is a type menu here where you can choose a few different options. And over to the right, you'll notice toggle the character and paragraph panels. So if I click toggle the character and paragraph panels, I can get to things like leading or line spacing, horizontal or vertical scale. I can see that the font I landed on is Harlow, and this kind of gives me a 1950s feel, that vintage, where I may think that the biscuits were made at a diner. So it's evoking an emotion of nostalgia for the 1950s in America. I really do like this font choice, but the letter spacing is a little off for me. So with the letter spacing, I almost always choose optical kerning. Optical goes above and beyond the kerning pairs, the letter combinations built in by the font vendor, and makes each letter a bit more proportionally spaced. Now that's a little bit more of a high-end design concept, but it's important to know that you can do that. In fact, between the B and the I in biscuits, I might even want to tighten that more. So here, I can slide up or down diagonally, just like I did with type. I have those same scrubby sliders to scoot that I just a little bit closer to the B. And you could do other letters. I sleep better at night when my type is kerned properly, but that's a story for a different day. I'm happy with this one, so I think I'm ready to show you the layer style. I'll go to my Move tool, and in order to make it look like the biscuit is actually rising up through the word biscuits, I will go to FX. Remember, FX for effects, but technically they're called layer styles. And I start with a drop shadow. The reason I start with a drop shadow is because the type needs a little bit of depth, because if I filled the text exactly with the image, then you wouldn't be able to see a line between the two. It would be a perfect seam, so the word biscuit would basically disappear. But with drop shadow, not a lot of people realize that you can actually click and drag directly on the type, even with a dialog open, and move the shadow. And I also love clicking in size and using my up arrow keys on my keyboard or my down arrow keys to make subtle nudges. This trick of up and down arrow keys just by itself, once you click in the number field, work in about 90% of the dialogues in Adobe programs. Now I'll give it just a little depth with bevel and emboss, but please don't go nuts with these. Just because there's a button doesn't mean you have to use every effect. If you use an effect on type, use it thoughtfully. Make sure you're conveying some sort of message by using that. In this case, I want it to look like the word biscuits is stamped into the image, so that's why I'm choosing bevel and emboss. And for a little bit more depth, so the type looks like it's rising up through the biscuit, I will add the drop shadow, which I started with. Now I will go to Pattern Overlay. And it's important when you go to Pattern Overlay, you don't simply check the box. Checking it on or off applies the default bubbles pattern, but doesn't let you change it. So this is the incorrect way to do it. The correct way to change the pattern is to click on the Words Pattern Overlay so that it's highlighted in blue. When you click on the words, here you will see your layer style options. So now I'll click on Pattern, and the last pattern in the list is the Biscuits pattern that I created. And magically, the Biscuits image is rising up through the word biscuits. I also highly recommend that you uncheck Link with Layer. And let me show you why before I turn that off. With Link with Layer on, if I click OK and decide to move the biscuits, the image is stuck in position in the words, so I'm not seeing to these biscuits in the background. To fix that, I double-click on Pattern Overlay in the Layers panel. I click Snap to Origin, and it resets the point. It resets basically the image inside. And now I uncheck Link with Layer. Once that's unchecked, I can click OK, then click and drag down, and now, no matter where I place this, I'm seeing through to the proper image in the background. So give this very cool effect a try on your own with any interesting image. The steps used to create this were opening the image, choosing Edit Define Pattern, clicking the Type tool and putting the word or words you'd like to appear there in, and choosing the proper font and size and style. And then finally, I do need something to give the type depth, a drop shadow, or a bevel and emboss, or both. And then once those have an edge to the characters, you can apply the image that you made a pattern as the pattern overlay. A very cool technique, and you should try this out on your own.